Today in Draw My Life, Freddy Krueger. Possibly one of the most famous villains of the 80s. You've probably heard of him. Frederick Charles Krueger. The character was created by American director Wes Craven for the horror movie A Nightmare on Elm Street, released in 1984. The actor Robert Englund played the character in all the films of the original saga before being replaced by Jackie Earle Haley for the 2010 remake. His story begins in the 1940s when Amanda Krueger, a young nun, worked at the Westing Hill Psychiatric Hospital. During her stay, she got accidentally locked in a room with 100 criminally insane men. There, the men abused and attacked her. As a result, she found herself pregnant and struggling to stay alive. Freddy was born in September 1942, and since Amanda couldn't take care of him, she put him up for adoption. Later, he was taken in by Mr. Underwood. Freddy's adopted father was an abusive alcoholic who mistreated him very often. Over the years, Freddy began to exhibit unusual behavior, somewhat psychotic. In school, he killed a class pet, a hamster. He was also bullied by his classmates, who called him the bastard son of 100 maniacs. By his teenage years, Freddy enjoyed the beatings and punishments he received and associated them with pleasure. Out of revenge for all the times he had to endure Mr. Underwood's abuse, Freddy murdered him with a razor blade. He developed what he called the secret of pain, a philosophy that pain can only be applied to others when it has been controlled and felt by oneself. As an adult, Freddy worked at the local power plant and married Loretta, with whom he had a daughter, Catherine. However, beneath that perfect cover, he had a raging desire to take revenge for all that had happened to him in his childhood. He started to focus on the children of his former classmates. Freddy kidnapped his victims and took them to the boiler of the power plant. There, he would torture his prisoners using a glove with knives he had made himself. Once he's finished, he'd collect the remains of his victims and dump them around the city. This led to his reputation as the serial killer known as the Springwood Slasher. It didn't take long for Loretta to discover that in their own basement, Freddy kept various tools of torture, including different versions of the glove. When he caught her in the basement, he murdered her in front of her daughter. Before getting arrested, Freddy killed about 20 children for which he was taken into trial. But because the warrant was signed incorrectly, he was released and the case was dismissed. After the trial, his mother Amanda hanged herself in the same room where she was abused. Meanwhile, seeing the injustice being done, the neighborhood parents took the matter into their own hands. They got together and took him to the basement of a house, poured gasoline on him, and then set him on fire. Wrapped in flames and slowly dying, Freddy met the Demon of Dreams, who sought out evil human souls to become their agents and spread chaos. The demon offered Freddy the power to murder people in his dreams, killing them in the real world as well. He didn't think twice and accepted the offer. He could continue his killing spree and was allowed to wander the dream realm, where any harm he caused would also happen in reality. The neighborhood members who set Freddy on fire didn't realize what had happened. They took his remains to the Penny Brothers car cemetery and transported him inside the trunk of a red Cadillac. This prevented his corpse from resting in peace on consecrated ground, which could have prevented his transformation, or at least him becoming too powerful. Consequently, the Burroughs family decided to adopt Freddy's daughter, Catherine. They took her out of Spring, and her records were eventually erased. 13 years later, in 1981, Freddy Krueger became an urban legend. His name was mentioned in children's songs, but no one gave them too much meaning. Meanwhile, the parents of Elm Street, those who were involved in Freddy's attack and death, remembered the event. But all of a sudden, something weird started happening. The teenage children of these parents began to die, in a very distinguishable way, in their sleep. Some of them told their parents that they had seen a man named Freddy in their dreams, but the parents tended to ignore the stories. Using the power given to him by the demons, Freddy would invade and take control of the dreams of his victims, driving them to their death. He enjoyed playing with people inside their dreams, scaring them by shape-shifting or appearing out of nowhere. As he killed more, the souls of teenagers were absorbed into Freddy's body, and as more people believed in his existence and fear spread among them, his power increased. At the peak of his powers, he was capable of possessing humans or even their corpses. Freddy spent a decade murdering every teenager in Springwood while they slept, to the degree that the town was wiped out and under his control. By absorbing the souls of his victims, he became powerful enough to break the boundary between dreams and reality. The adults had been driven mad by the death of their children and remained in fear. As Freddy finished taking the life of Springwood's children, he sought out to leave town to find another place to continue the killing spree. However, for Freddy to get out of the city limits, he needed one person to make it happen: his daughter, Freddy Krueger. Using the last of his remaining powers, he tracked down his daughter and discovered that she had changed her name to Maggie Burroughs. She now worked as a counselor for troubled teens and young adults in another city. After her mother's death, she was raised by foster parents and had blocked all the bad memories of her childhood. When Freddy and Maggie met again, he told her the truth and everything about his true identity. In addition, he tried to convince her to join him and help him with his plans to continue the murders. She refused to accept her father's offer, and together with her partner and dream psychiatrist, Doc, they devised a way to take Freddy down. They managed to get him out of Maggie's dreams and into the real world. Once there, Maggie stabbed him with his own glove and put a bomb in his chest, thus killing Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger's strong impression left a mark in pop culture. His appearance and look are crucial to recognizing him, as he wears his famous green and red striped sweater and hat. The director, Wes Craven, decided to use these colors after reading in a scientific journal that this combination is the most difficult for the human eye to perceive. It is specifically used to cause the viewer discomfort. In addition to the sweater, Freddy wears his famous Razer Glove. Craven was inspired by his cat after watching him scratch the side of the couch one night. His goal was to give Freddy an iconic weapon, as every successful character had a unique weapon that made him memorable. He also sought to highlight the subconscious fear of animals' claws, transferring it to a human hand. The impact of Freddy Krueger was so strong that they made a crossover with the Friday the 13th movie series and its main antagonist, Jason Voorhees. The movie, Freddy vs. Jason, was released in August 2003. The story picks up after the events of the last Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Springwood was beginning to return to normal while Freddy remained in hell with no way to escape. Freddy realized that the new inhabitants were not afraid of him, so he resurrected the villain Jason Voorhees. Freddy sent him to Springwood and ordered him to kill the teenagers of Elm Street to make them believe he was back and provoke fear. His plan worked as expected. He provoked the locals' terror and had enough power to return to Springwood. But he didn't plan on Jason continuing to kill, thus invading his territory and starting a battle between the two murderers. The character of Freddy Krueger has received honorable mentions in several TV programs. In the animated show Robot Chicken, Freddy is joined by other villains such as Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, Ghostface, Pinhead, and Littleface in a parody of the reality show Big Brother. He also appeared in a Halloween episode of The Simpsons, in South Park, and Rick and Morty. Freddy Krueger has also appeared in video games, specifically in Ed Boon's Mortal Kombat. He is the fourth downloadable character in the Mortal Kombat release in August 2011. And the second guest character after Kratos, a character from God of War. In the video game, Freddy has gloves on both hands, and his fatalities, signature moves of the franchise, reference how he kills other characters in the original movie. Platinum Dunes, the production company that made the remakes of Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 2003, was commissioned to remake Nightmare on Elm Street in 2008. Directed by Samuel Bayard, the film focuses on the origin of Freddy Krueger before he became a killer who attacks his victims in their dreams. In this version, Freddy is the gardener of a nursery school, and his parents burned him alive when they discover that he attacks children at school. Years later, Freddy returns to kill children in their nightmares, just like the original 1984 film. Freddy Krueger is definitely a horror movie icon, but do you know his story? Leave us in the comments what other horror villain you want to see on the channel, and subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next video!